today's talk is about Pride and Prejudice. And part of our history in our community is that, 50 years ago yesterday in Greenwich Village, New York, there was an uprising that sparked anger and injustice. And this is the kind of story that we weren't really taught in school. And sometimes those stories go on unnoticed because they weren't the kind of history that was shared in school. But this was called Stonewall, and it was from Stonewall Inn. And in Stonewall Inn, it was a series of demonstrations that were put on by the members of the LGBT community. And they were rising up against these police raids that were happening over and over and over again. And the raids had become almost normal, except for that on June 28th, which was yesterday, when the communities began to stand up and to speak their truth, to claim their rights as Americans. Although we are a country based on freedom for all, we still have many people in our communities who freedom for all actually comes with conditions. Anti-gay legal system that was going on, rampant and socially acceptable homophobia. That was just a thing, And there were policies and there were programs that were set up to try and heal or try and erase the gay experience. That was how we looked at it, that it was something that needed to be changed and erased. And even the churches, which were supposed to be sanctuaries, were of no help. The churches, and continue to be of no help in some ways, continue to close their doors for anybody who identifies as LGBTQ. The social annihilation and the discrimination that went on underneath religion and politics had nothing to do with love your brother as yourself. And yet that's what we say we are in this country. It was universally accepted belief that LGBTQ people were actually sick. I don't know if you remember, but as a child, the idea that you could say, this was socially acceptable, you're so gay, in a negative way. That meant you were bad. And when somebody said she's gay, their response was, that's sick. That was a thing. And so for me, I know that form follows consciousness, and I had an early awareness that if you continue to tell a group of people that they're sick, they're going to begin to agree with you. And not long after that, we had this AIDS epidemic. And the AIDS epidemic didn't just affect the LGBTQ community, but other people that we also thought were sick, like drug addicts. Drug addicts were considered sick people. We have gained so much compassion over the last 50 years. We've risen to a greater idea of ourselves. And with the help of people who are protesting and with the help of people who are passionate about compassion. So, back to the story at Stonewall. One day these people who were being bullied and berated and beaten, they just got fed up and they started to stand up for their rights. And these were not rights that they should have had to fight for, right? These were rights that came with being an American under our Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the riots began this movement, this uprising of consciousness that said that we will not be shamed into submission, that we're here and we're queer. That was one of their battle cries. And there were drag queens, and there were transgender people, and there were butch lesbians, and there were homeless youth, and there were effeminate men, and this was just like a motley, scrappy tribe of misfits that were standing up together, who were standing up not just to not be silenced, but because they were also fed up with watching their brothers and sisters being beaten and degraded. Thank goodness that there's only so much of that the human spirit can take before anger rises up. So they rose up that day, and they rose and they continued to rise. But when the police officers lost control of the situation, and the more that they uprise, the more they continue to be beaten down, but they continue to rise back up. And then 6 months into that, there began to come into form, 2 gay activist organizations were formed in New York City to help move forward a more compassionate agenda. And 3 newspapers were put into publication that were there to support the LGBT community. And I love that because in the beginning there was the word, and the word takes form. And so they were using the word and a newspaper to spread. A year later, it was the first Pride Parade. And they marched in New York, and they marched in San Francisco, and they marched in Los Angeles, and they commiserated it in Chicago. Today, we still have these parades every year. It's a big part of our community because when I I started it for those people who were disenfranchised, divorcees, drug addicts, and gay people. Fun crowd. That was part of it, and so many of us here identify maybe as the trifecta. I think I do. No, I don't. So that's what this church was for, to keep the doors open, to have a church, an umbrella of God, which says, no matter where you've been or what you've done or who you've been with, we love you, I love you, to represent that truth of that God. That is the truth of God, without conditions. So for all of them who continue to live out loud and proud, I'm extremely grateful.
Rita is the charm.
I'm grateful not just as a community member, but as a mother of a transgender son. I don't even know what his walk would be like, which is already tough, if those stigmas were still in place. And those stigmas even lived within me when he first came out. I was like, oh no, instead of, oh yeah. We're still there. Even as liberal as I am, when he came in and sat down at my table, I was like, oh man, this isn't as easy breezy as I thought. It's not all, rainbows and unicorns. This is my kid going out into a community where I don't know if he's going to be safe because of how he identifies. And every time he walks into his self-identified background, I get scared, So it's a thing. So I'm really grateful that we're moving forward, and I really think we do have cause to celebrate. Today's talk, Pride and Prejudice, is an interesting concept to have a backdrop for this day. Because it's funny about the words pride and prejudice. They can give us a glimpse into who we are. One of these words tell us where we thrive, and one of them tell us where we hide. And I think that pride has been getting a really bad rap, where prejudice goes unchecked all the time. Isn't that interesting? Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins, and prejudice didn't even make the list. I don't know about that, but we live in an upside-down world, and where sanity is crazy. St. Augustine is known to say that it was pride that changed angels into devils. And Thomas Aquinas says that the root of pride is found to consist in men not being in some way subject to God and his rules. So what are God's rules? Jesus gave us a great example of what the rules were. And the amazing thing about the core beliefs of Jesus' teaching, when they're not polluted by organizations, is that they really tell us the truth, and sometimes the truth that we do not want to follow. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. Number 1. Put that first. And if you put that first, that means putting all the characteristics of God first, putting peace first, putting love first, putting generosity first. Right? So doing that first, above all else, put that first. And then the second is love your neighbor as yourself. There are no 2 greater commandments than this. So love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't feel good about yourself, if you don't have pride in yourself, there's no way you're going to have pride. There's no way you're going to extend goodness to your brother. So having a bit of pride in yourself is not something that needs to be shamed. Having pride in yourself is something that actually helps you to serve others. It's helpful to nurture a feeling of honor and respect and a sense of personal worth. Some of us come in here so beaten down, that we don't even know how to take a compliment, that we don't trust the world, that we come in ragged, tagged, and shamed and blamed and guilty, and we're dressed in this cloak that we can barely stand up in. And we have to begin to allow ourselves to feel into our own pride. What are we proud of? So pride can be very directional. Right? You could ask yourself, I could ask you now, to think about, what are you proud of? What are the things that you're really proud of? In our celebration, we got to hear, underneath all those celebrations was, I'm proud of my daughter for stepping up. I'm proud of myself for getting on the cheer team. I'm proud of myself for getting to church today. I'm proud of those things. I think every word has many ways to be defined, and it can slip into conceit. And so why does St. Augustus and Thomas Aquinas and whoever offered the 7 deadly sins, why what was pride the thing? And I think it stems from the thinking that what we're proud of was authored by us. And so we have this desire to take responsibility for the things that come through us. As long as you know that the buck doesn't stop here, that all praise goes to the divine within you, then there's every reason for you to be proud to be in collaboration. And when you talk about the things that you decided to give birth to, that was always in collaboration with the divine. Self-appreciation will help you to be an extension of this love. Feeling a deep pleasure of satisfaction. You know, when you show up to what you love, it enlightens you. It is derived from your own achievements. And also we have pride in other people's achievements. And that is really good. It's the opposite of jealousy. I'm so proud of you. Lesson 61 in A Course in Miracles says, I'm the light of the world. Can you get more proud sounding than that? But it actually addresses it. It says, who is the light of the world except God's Son? This then is merely a statement of the truth about yourself. It's the opposite of a statement of pride. It's the opposite. It's just the truth. And so our light can get blocked because we think, I don't want to be proud. But it's the opposite of pride to say, I am the light of the world. It's the opposite of arrogance. It's the opposite of self-deception. It does not describe the self-concepts that you have made. It does not refer to any of the characteristics in which you have endowed your idol. It refers to you as you were created by God. It simply states the truth. You are a light of the world. You are not a light of the world. It says, I am the light of the world. Swallow that pride. To the ego, today's idea is the epitome of self-glorification, but the ego does not understand humility, mistaking it for self-debasement. Humility consists of accepting your role in salvation and taking no other. It is not humility to insist you cannot be the light of the world. If that is the function that God has assigned to you, it's only arrogance that would assert this function cannot be for you, and arrogance is always, always the ego. So you're the light of the world. You're the light of the world. Be proud of this role that God has given you. And given it to you so you can extend God's love, not so you can get all the glory. All of my worthy creations that ever come through me, all of the worthy creations, the stories, the songs, all of the businesses, all of that has ever come through you was first authored by God. And you were able to carry it through because you didn't abort that concept through fear or control. That's it. That's how it happened. That's how it took form. That's how it arrived here. And you did that hopefully by not be forcing it, by surrendering to it. And the more that we surrender to it, the more we can birth more audacious things without stress and struggle and fear. So we talk about these things in the Course in Creating, that we can be pulled by vision. And that vision holds a sense of excitement, self-satisfaction, and pride. Or we can be pushed by pain. And neither one is the wrong way to go. One is just a little bit easier. Those men and women at Stonewall Inn, they were pushed by pain. But I can't think of really anything more painful than when you bury your own issues in your brother and you move forward through projection. And projection is prejudice. Prejudice is when you're not taking responsibility and we're taking the thing that we don't like about ourselves and we're sinking it into our brother and we're standing at a safe distance and we're saying, that's not good. Because I don't want to heal it within myself. And the great news is, if you do this, it will ensure that you will never heal. So if that's what you're about, you can keep pointing the finger out at the world and ensure that you always stay in a tight confine of your own ego. Prejudice is an expression of fear beliefs. And sometimes we find that some things we find unacceptable are the very things that we find unlovable about ourselves. And so it's always a call for love. And we don't just bury them in strangers. We usually tuck them into those who are closest to us, like our moms and our kids and our best friends and our enemies. The ones that are right here so we can tuck them in there so we know where they are without having to kill them. And we hide it so well that we forget that it's ours. God didn't author that. God didn't author that any of his children were unworthy or bad in any way, shape, or form. That authorization came directly from your pen. So how do we find balance between these two ideas of pride and prejudice? Jesus gives us another beautiful teaching. He says, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, as I mentioned this morning, little children, when they come into our presence, they're blessing us. You will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So what is it about little children that we're being asked to embody? So little children have the capacity to hold a great deal of unedited joy, like embarrassing degrees of joy. Like they walk into a room and they start singing and dancing and they don't care. And And it's just so beautiful how unedited they are. Little children have a great deal of compassion. I mean, they have compassion for animals. They have compassion for people, for all people. I remember when I first took my son on the subway, Owen, when he was a little kid, and like he would just reach out to everyone. He was in his umbrella stroller, and he would like pat the homeless man. I was like, oh, please don't do that. Like he had more unedited love than I even knew I could accomplish, and I wanted to protect the world from his unedited love. That's what children give us. They give us an example of what that looks like. They give us an example of innocence. They are innocent and they see everyone else as innocent. That's such a beautiful thing to begin to embody. They're so inclusive. Like they're not the ones building fences. Like they're the ones building bridges. And they don't go to work. They go to play. So that would be a really fun thing to take on as we move into the summer. Children don't know about prejudice. We teach them that. They don't know about hate. We teach them that. They don't know about sexism. They don't know about homophobia. We teach them that. And someone taught us that as well. But we can unlearn that together. And we can move into a greater idea of our innocence. So as we move into summer, I'm going to invite you to activate that pride, that goodness and the expectancy of the goodness of humanity. To really expect yourself to feel like you are God's pride and joy. And that you're willing to look out at the world and everyone you see recognize that they are God's pride and joy. And like a lion's pride, that we're here to take care of each other. And I'm going to ask you to dedicate yourself to standing up to love and speaking out for love. Wherever you see that someone, specifically the least of our brothers, is being jeopardized. That's ours to do. We've been given everything that we need. And now if we don't extend it, we'll become stagnant. So to really be open to, as I let myself shine and play, I'm also going to be willing to really be here for the benefit of all. And ask the Holy Spirit to assist you in healing any blind spots and prejudices. And romance that inner child within you and go play every single day. I wanted to close by just telling you that I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of us for being here, where we're coloring outside the lines, and we're showing up for love, and we're questioning things, and we're attempting to be better versions, and we're dropping old ideas, and we're letting go of broken allegiances, and we're stepping into love. And so I honor you for that.